Welcome to this Mastery Empowerment course from New Earth One Network. This is designed exclusively for your higher self connection and embodiment. Welcome to this Mastery Empowerment course. We are with a beautiful energy healer. Gail Jett is here, truly blending science, her medical background of 40 years, with this spirituality and energy medicine, energy healing modalities. Let's welcome Gail Jett here to this course. Thank you, Gail. Welcome.
Thank you, Lauren. I'm very glad to be here.
You are an Eden Energy Medicine Advanced Practitioner, and you also teach certification for that energy modality. And also 40 years as a nurse, my goodness, really
Yes.
blending, again, this medical background with energy healing. So share with us a little bit about what drew you from this science perspective into something really esoteric of energy healing.
Absolutely. Well, I became a nurse practitioner long before anybody even knew what that was. So part of me has always been a pioneer and likes to do things a little differently, if that makes sense. So in 2007, I have shared this story with many people, but it's kind of fun. And I was sitting around shredding junk mail one day, and this little envelope or postcard thing came through, and it said something about increasing my energy. And I thought, well, yeah, on a day like today, it was sort of this overcast day in October. And I thought I would love to have more energy today because it's just kind of one of those days. But I started to stick it in the shredder, and it was like this hand stopped me. And I looked at it again. And so the first thing that drew me to it was I could get continuing education credits for my nursing license. And I went, okay, that's a good thing. And secondly, it was held in Seattle, which is about 6 hours drive north of me. I live here in Central Oregon. And I thought, well, that's doable. It's a weekend. And the two people who were presenting it were people that I was not familiar with at all, but I was always open to learning some new things. And this was Donna Eden and her husband, Dr. David Feinstein. So I drove up to Seattle, and I was completely blown away by what I experienced in Donna's class. She taught the first day, and she had us doing various things, but I just remember that I wanted to know more about what I was experiencing. I felt sensations and saw colors, and it was just a completely different experience for me. And what sold me on it, being pretty left brain at the time, very, in healthcare, we are tasked with having good scientific evidence to back up, our practice. So that was where I was coming from. But when I went to David's presentation the next day, he's very well known in the energy psychology world and emotional freedom tapping and that kind of thing. And he did a presentation on the effects of EFT with and I don't remember the exact title, but it was about reducing the effects of anxiety in a person around a particular issue. And I just remember that this was a woman who was afraid of spiders and I think had something happen on a camping trip. But anyway, he had brought her up and was working with her, and she had this significant change in her fear around spiders. But of course, one of the things that also sold me was he did a presentation showing some PET scans, PET scans, that showed that when a person took a benzodiazepine, and these are in the category of drugs like Ativan and Valium and that kind of thing, that they would take this for anxiety, and you would see you would see a little bit of the certain areas of the brain light up as a result. But when the person did the tapping, that's what sold me, was they did the tapping, and there was so much, significantly more of the brain that lit up. So that got my attention. Again, that was the more scientific, more left brain, analytical, asking questions. I need to know more about this. And I will say a little backstory on this was that my first experience with any kind of energy work, I was thinking about this, and I want to say it was probably in the 80s, where I had gone to a seminar, and I was living in San Diego County at that time. And I'd gone to a seminar in San Diego, and my mom and my sister both went too, and it was on Reiki. And I remember, and those of us who are Reiki practitioners, some of this, you will cringe over this, but it was a large group attunement in a hotel room. Okay, we're all sitting next to each other, and so this is quite a while ago. But I remember going home because I just remembered how my hands were feeling. And I was working on we'd gone over to dinner that night at some friends, and I'm busy working on everybody, and they're all talking about your hands. They're so hot. And they didn't feel hot to me at all. I mean, I didn't notice anything, but they're all talking about it. And I was like, wow, there's something to this. So that was my very first introduction. But then after going to Donna and David's presentation, I was like, wow, I need to know more about this. And I remember Saturday night in my hotel room, brushing my teeth, and it was like this voice almost said, your life's about to change in a big way. And so I found out that they had a certification program, and that they were at that time doing these 5-day intensive trainings, and that they had one more going the following month. I think it was in November, and it was in San Diego. So I was able to jump in and sign on and take that. And the rest is history. The more that I've gotten into this work, the more fascinated I am. But my left brain has always continued to ask questions. And so the right brain definitely was waking up and going, this is very cool. And the left brain's going, but how is this working? And I began to incorporate this into my practice as a nurse practitioner. I was blessed to, at the time, be working with a very progressive OBGYN group who were really open to me bringing this in. I was able to actually see my patients. It was a little disjointed, but I would start out in the morning. My first client would be an energy session, and I had a massage table set up in my office. And then I would go and do conventional, it was a big women's healthcare group, so I was doing a lot of women's health, and so I would do that all day long. And I found that it was helpful to incorporate some of the things that I'd learned, like here's some holds that you can do for worry, and you can do this for anxiety, and sometimes with pain. I could show them some easy little techniques that could help with pain. So I would give them little energy tools. And then my last client of the day would be another energy client. And then the doctors were very open to letting me use different techniques. Many of us as women know that there can be some kind of ouchy gynecological procedures that are done. And so we would do them. It's things like endometrial ablations and maybe putting in IUDs and things like that. They can be kind of painful. So some of the patients, we would give them the option of having energy work to augment versus medication. And a lot of them, some would do a blending of both, but many of them chose to have the energy medicine, augmentation. And we had good results. So that was, very empowering. And the practice ended up dissolving, a number of reasons. And so I was then kind of on my own, and I was doing some part-time work in more family medicine. But I found that I was getting more intrigued and interested with my energy medicine practice. I think because with conventional medicine, we have diagnoses, and these are, I hate to call them boxes, but they kind of are. So they're boxes where we say, okay, you have this diagnosis, and we would feel comfortable putting somebody in a box because we'd say, well, here are the different symptoms you have, and here's how we treat this. But what I love about energy medicine, which is very much based on traditional and old-fashioned Chinese medicine, ancient Chinese medicine, is that it gave me a whole other perspective to begin to look at my client. And the reason I say that is because one of the other things that I have found over the years, whether it's conventional or energy-based of my practice, is one of my teachers in my nurse practitioner program was a family doctor. And he said, if you want to know what is going on with your patient, ask them what's going on in their lives, and you will get and give them 20 minutes to talk, and you'll get your diagnosis. And I've never forgotten that, because when I listen to people talk, I can gain a tremendous amount of information just by watching them, watching their body language, watching eye contact, watching, variety of movements. And when I hear about their diagnosis, then it tells me from the Chinese, medicine perspective, what might be some areas that I want to take a closer look at. For example, if somebody's got something going on with let's just say they've got irritable bowel. Okay, that's a common problem. Well, conventional medicine says that, we think it's from a variety of, we think this is probably what causes it. Stress plays a role. We know that. Certainly, I think diet, environment, all kinds of things. But Chinese medicine can bring in a whole other perspective, such as, is the person a worrier? Okay, do they worry a lot? Are they ruminating a lot? Are they chewing on something? I wouldn't know anything about that personally, but where I'm going is that you start to go, there's another area that I may want to take a look at in my energy work and do some more detective work in that area, if that makes sense. So I think there is a real need and a real place for energy-based therapies in today's healthcare system, because it offers a whole other way of looking at things. I have a little story. I'll give you an example, and I know I have permission to use this because I've talked with my client, and she was fine with me writing this up even as a case study. But several years ago, I had a woman come in who had some pain in her face, right about here, and they were concerned about something possibly going on in her gum, the mucosa, I should say, lining. And after about this, I think it was about the second time that I saw her toward the end of the visit, because she was having pain and she could not get rid of the pain. And something drew me, and this will make sense in a minute, something drew me to ask the question, have you had a loss recently? And she burst into tears and she said, my dog. And she had lost her dog it probably was close to a year prior, but any of us who have had really great dogs in our lives, that there's some that they leave a hole, after their physical presence is done here, they leave a hole. So we talked about it a little bit, and then I had her go ahead and hold one hand on her forehead and then one hand on top of her head. And these are specific acupressure points, acupressure when we touch them, okay? They're acupuncture points called neurovascular reflex points that help to bring the blood back up into the brain, for starters, because whenever we go through a stressful situation, and this can be fear, worry, anger, anxiety, panic anxiety, did I get everybody? And grief, okay? What we've found scientifically, and they've measured this using angiography, is they've shown that up to 80% of the blood will leave the forebrain. And, this is where we have our smarts, we have our mindfulness tools. And if up to 80% of the blood leaves that area, we're going to have trouble accessing that. Okay. The blood goes into the body for the stress response, the fight or flight response. And so it goes into the heart, the lungs, the kidneys, the muscles, so that we can run or fight. And we also make increased amounts of hormones. We make increased adrenaline, which gives us a burst of energy to either fight the saber-toothed tiger or the marauding tribes or whatever, or to run. And we get a burst of cortisol. And there's other things going on too, but these are some basics. Cortisol is very good at giving one a burst of energy in addition to blunting pain. So maybe the tiger bit you, or somebody, you took a sword, whatever, but it'll get you out of the initial, area to where you can go back and assess what's going on with your wounds. Now, in today's world, we don't have things like saber-toothed tigers, marauding tribes, but we've sure got a lot of other things going on. And everybody knows that right now, this is one of the most stressful times in human history for a lot of reasons. And so the same thing is happening. Now, why this is important from a health standpoint is that there are three main body systems that go offline every time this happens, because they're not considered important in the short-term general scheme of things. The first one that goes offline is the immune system. Because if you've got, I forget who pointed this out, it may have been Dr. Bruce Lipton, but if you've got an infection of some sort, that's going to be the saber-toothed tiger's problem, not yours. Okay. The second system that goes offline is the reproductive system. Same thing. You're not going to need to worry about pregnancy if you're running from the saber-toothed tiger or whatever. The third system that goes offline is the gastrointestinal system. And there's a lot that happens with that. And the reason I bring that up is that I know that even currently in my energy healing practice, and when I was certainly working conventional medicine, there's so much gastrointestinal distress these days, ranging from irritable bowel to colitis to SIBO to, you name it. I mean, celiac disease. There's all of these various issues with our gastrointestinal tract. But it goes offline because, again, it's not considered crucial to be digesting your food at that moment or anything else when you've got to, muster all the energy and the blood and everything for you to be able to fight or flee. And we're spending a tremendous amount of time, most of us, in a fight or flight situation these days. And it's not good for our health at all. This is not good. And I really believe that one of the driving factors right now with the number, the amount of illness that's going around with this, with the virus and everything, is because people's immune systems are totally tapped out because they've been so stressed out. Now, that's just my personal opinion. But when you understand this, looking at it through the lens of Chinese medicine perspective, it just offers a whole other piece of looking at this.
I love how you really do bring in your medical background, for especially with seeing how the results of tapping, the results of tapping and its effect on the brain and how it awakens the brain. I mean, that's fascinating. And so here we've got this energy tools, these energy tools like the one that you shared. It's amazing. There's little tips that you can offer all of us. What we are finding at this time is that people are paying attention more to their health. And that's a good thing. And that's why the work that you do is so important. So, this is an introduction to the science and spirituality of energy medicine. And you're going to share a few tools with us that we can use to comfort and, wow, change brain waves and balance out the body, all of it.
Exactly. Well, and I'll share with you that with this woman that was talking about her dog, to finish that story, she held these points for a time. And we generally recommend, if you're short of time, because I'm going to give you some other holds for other emotions. If you're short of time, you can hold for about 3 deep breaths. If you have the time, you ideally want to hold for about 2 to 3 minutes or longer, maybe up to 5, and sometimes longer than that. But what I have my clients do, what I recommend, and I would recommend to all of our listeners, is if you have a grief that, is something, and there's a lot of that right now too, okay? And so if you have a loss that you're suffering, I'm gonna back up for a minute and tell you why you're doing what you're doing. Now, first I said these are neurovascular points that help to bring the blood back up into the brain. Part of that is when we get circulation restored to the emotional centers and the higher cognitive centers of the brain, we cannot be in that state of overwhelm. So what I tell people is rate your issue, whether it's grief or anger or loss or whatever, on a scale of 1 to 10. What number would you give it, with 10 being the worst, that it can be? And then I want you to sink into that issue if you're comfortable doing that. I appreciate that for some people it's so raw that they're just not ready, and that's okay too. All right. People need to understand that. But let's just say maybe it's been a kind of a chronic long-term thing. So you sink into the issue, and this is what my client did. She just, into her sadness, had some tears, and then she actually started laughing. And I thought I had an idea why, but sure enough, she said, what I did was she said, as it went down, the intensity really ratcheted down. And then I thought about all the fun times we used to have, and the goofiness. All of us know that our dogs can have goofy moments. All right. The things that make us just laugh, they're just funny. And she was remembering that. And what is important to understand is that this doesn't take the memory away. We're not erasing memories or anything like that. What we are doing is taking the emotional charge off that memory, because guess what? We are electromagnetic beings, and these are some of the things that I'll be talking about. And our hands are electromagnetic, and they can affect these points because they help to bring the blood. That's why they're called neuro and vascular reflex points, because they help to bring the blood back up into the brain, to the emotional center. So that was something that she found, amazing, because the pain went away too. And I think that was we were like, wow. Now, granted, she went on to have some other issues down the road, but she managed to get a handle on that particular pain. There were some other things going on that had nothing to do with the dog. So then we had to deal with those. But for what the take home I want people to understand is that sometimes you can have some really profound results with doing these very simple techniques. Now, I'll go ahead and share with people, and this is very, very basic. We go into much more detail in the Eden Energy Medicine Certification Program, which is a 2-year basic program. But for our purposes here, let's just say that somebody's having a lot of worry. Well, there's points right here on the cheekbones that are related to the stomach. Now, we can tap these points, but you can also hold these points. And this is something I'll be explaining more in my courses as well. What are we doing? We're affecting something called piezoelectricity. And that's the same as, it means pressure, electricity. It just means that whenever we touch the body, whether we tap it, whether we hold it, it's the touch part that creates electricity from the pressure. And that's what piezo, it's Piezo, electricity is. And it's a thing. It's a real thing. When I went through massage school, one of the things I really remembered them talking about was when we lay our hands on another person, and whether it's just laying hands on or whether you're doing the pressure, the strokes with massage, that we are causing a change in the matrix of the cell that changes it from what we call a gel substance, more gel-like, and this is in the interstitial fluid cells and in the fluid around, the whole matrix around the cells. It changes it from more of a gel-like structure to a solution. Briefly, why does that matter? Because that's felt to be one of the ways that we release toxins. Toxins have an electromagnetic charge too, and so they can be let go. They're felt to be stored in various areas in the body and in the tissues. But when we have that pressure change, and that's one of the reasons that, those of us who've had massage, why it feels so good. And you're like, oh, it's like Jello afterwards. But we also tell everybody, make sure you drink plenty of water, because you've just offloaded a lot of toxins. And toxins are part of living and breathing and being here on planet Earth. You're never going to get away from them. We just don't want to hang on to any more of them than we have to. Okay. So going back to these points, the stomach in Chinese medicine, they talk about what we call the 5 elements. And Donna prefers to call it the 5 rhythms. She explains that she sees the energy of these elements flowing rhythmically throughout the body within all of the other energy systems. And I totally agree with that. But what we're going to just kind of in a very brief nutshell, we talk about we start with in Chinese medicine, we call it the creation cycle or flow cycle. And that is where we start with the water rhythm, water element. We have two meridians involved in that, and that is the bladder meridian, which is yang or masculine, and kidney, which is yin or feminine. The water element, when it is balanced, again, this is very general. I've taught a whole 2-day class on 5 element theory. But when the water element is balanced, when bladder and kidney are both balanced, we have hope. When they are out of balance, we can have fear. Okay. So a sign of imbalance in the water element can be a lot of fear. Okay. We move in, and water is the same as winter. That's another way to remember it. So we go through the whole cycles, right? Because we're into autumn now, right? We're at the end of a cycle. From water, we move into the wood element, which is the same as spring. And that has the gallbladder meridian, which is yang, and liver, which is yin. And the wood element, when it is balanced, can be about assertiveness and standing in your power. When it's out of balance, it can be about anger and aggression. And another piece that fits in there quite often can be guilt, and that's liver. Liver, again, this is very, very general, but sometimes being hard on ourselves, feeling a lot of guilt over whatever, that can manifest that way. Okay. And so then we move into the fire rhythm, which is, or element, which is the same as summer. We have 4 meridians here. Now, 2 of them correspond with physical organs, and that would be heart, which is yin, feminine, and small intestine, which is yang, masculine. We also have 2 other ones that conventional medicine does not recognize at all. Well, yeah, at all. One of them is the pericardium, which we also refer to as circulation sex in energy in the Eden method. It is the physical covering of the heart, and it's a very tough, fibrous sac. It exists. It covers the heart. In Chinese medicine, it's called the heart's defender. And the other meridian, and it's a yin, and the other meridian is one called triple warmer, also known as triple heater, triple burner, Sanjiao. That's his Chinese name. And this is a meridian that is actually a whole energy system unto himself. I call him him. He's masculine energy, yang. In that he's kind of the overseer of our early warning defense system. So he senses danger, he will sound the alarm. And the alarm consists of the stress response that I mentioned. Okay. So when he sees something he either doesn't recognize and is like, whoa, I don't know if that's something we need to worry about, or he sees something he does recognize. He's like a computer in many ways, where it's programs, and he's like, okay, we've run into that program before and we had a problem. And I'll give people an example. This is an example out of my own life. When I was a little kid, I was about three or four. My mom's best friend had a collie dog, and I was told on more than one occasion, don't hug the dog. Well, it's a big furry dog, and what do you think I did? I hugged the dog, and the dog promptly turned around and bit me in the face badly. I actually had to have plastic surgery to fix here. I've still got some scars, but it was a female plastic surgeon, I might add. And you talk about being ahead of your time. I was 3 or 4, so she was way ahead of her time. Okay, because I'm 68 now, so this was a long time ago. So anyway, to this day, I love dogs. I've always had a dog. I have a dog now. I will look at collies from a distance. They're beautiful. And we had Lassie, right? Before many people's time. But anyway, that right there, she's the epitome of, the family dog. But to this day, I have an unease around being around collies. So that's triple warmer mediated. He's like, yeah, you remember last time that didn't go too well for you, did it? So you probably don't want to do that. Okay.
So triple warmer, is it an organ, a system? Is it a meridian? It's like,
that's a great question.
So like if you feel something on your skin, would that be triple warmer? Like if a car almost hits you and you're like, and you feel it on your skin? Okay.
Yeah, and thank you for asking that, because and I'll finish up the 5 rhythms here. Triple warmer is not only a meridian, but he's also what we call a radiant circuit. Donna calls them the radiant circuits because she sees them as circuits of joy. When we come on to this lifetime, we come onto this planet as little souls. We're full of joy. Think of little kids. They're laughing most of the time. There's nothing to me more infectious than hearing a little kid laugh. It gets me going every time. It just cracks me up when I hear kids laughing, right? But he's a meridian, he's a radiant circuit, and he's a whole system unto himself. And the problem is he was doing very well with sounding the alarm when it was appropriate, back probably before the industrial age. Because since that time, we've had successive increases in electrification of our earth. Okay. And it's brought up things he doesn't recognize. So these kinds of things, right? None of us want to give them up, but he doesn't think they're good things to have around. So quite often he can respond to that and we won't even know it. As we teach in
How
the
would he
program,
respond to it?
how is that?
How would he respond to it?
He can technically sound the alarm, and a person might, and I'm going to answer your question about, that near miss kind of thing. That's the adrenaline. And so while he's not, so conventional medicine does not even entertain the fact that he exists as an organ system. They can't even go there. Chinese medicine doesn't agree exactly on his form either, though there are some, and I would agree with this, that believe the fascia could possibly be the organ of triple warmer. And I'm comfortable with that just because the fascia models itself on anything that it forms around. Okay, it just does. And surgeons love working around with fascia. That's why robotic surgeries and laparoscopic surgeries can be so successful, is because the body has made these compartments, burners, okay, warmers, these three compartments, the chest, the abdomen, and the pelvis. And they're all separated, all the organs, they're shrink wrapped, so to speak, like saran wrap fascia. And it's a very thin, very tough fibrous tissue, but it's full of collagen. And collagen is also a great conductor of subtle electricity. Okay, so when we touch, we're touching everywhere, which is why you're right. Whenever we've had those near misses where we get that, that adrenaline rush, it's like, it's so instant that there has to be something driving that bus, because it's everywhere instantly. And then we get the shakes. That's adrenaline. And that we can thank Triple Warmer for that. So again, nobody completely agrees on what exactly he is for sure, but I think Donna has done a masterful job of explaining that he has a multifaceted role, both as a radiant circuit, which allows him, and this is an important thing to know, he can go and conscript energy from other energy systems. And one of the first places he goes, and this has to do with our immune system, one of the first places he goes is to the spleen meridian. Spleen sits opposite him on what we call the meridian flow wheel. Each meridian has a 2-hour window of time when it's most active. So Triple Warmer is most active at 9 to 11 at night. Spleen sits directly across him from 9 to 11 in the morning. Spleen oversees the immune system. Again, this is very general because we've got the vagus nerve involved in here, and that's so that's a whole other class. But when we get stressed, think about it, we get sick. And I think Chinese medicine provides a great other way of looking at this. And I'll finish the 5 rhythms. I want to go back to these other holds so I can tie this together for everyone. So after we're done with the fire element, it's the same as summer. When fire is balanced, it's about joy. When it is out of balance, it's about panic or anxiety. We have a lot of that right now. Okay. We move into the next section, which is called the earth element or earth rhythm, made up of the stomach meridian, which is yang, and the spleen meridian, which is yin. When earth is balanced, again, very general, it's about compassion. When it's out of balance, it's about worry. We got a lot of that going on right now. Finally, we move into the 5th rhythm or element, and that is autumn, which is metal. That's the last one. That's where we are now. We're in the time of metal or autumn. And lung, and lung is yin, and large intestine is yang. When metal is balanced, it's about reverence. When it's out of balance, it can be about grief and letting go. Grief specifically more with lung, okay? And also large intestine with letting go. Now that's literal and it's figurative. What are we hanging on to that doesn't serve us, that we can't let go of? And this is a time when we reflect at the end of this cycle, is there something we need to let go of that is no longer serving us? Okay. So I want to go over with everybody what these 5 emotional holds are. So we know that grief and letting go is hand on the top of the head. That's metal. Okay. If we are having worry, the easy way to do this, we have some points on the forehead called the frontal neurovasculars or main neurovasculars. Donna calls these, rightly so, she calls them the oh my God points. Because how many times have we heard something, oh my God, right? So those are the points. Now, when you hold those points by themselves, right there, they will do a ton of good for you. So if you did nothing else, you can just hold these. But I think if you want more bang for your buck and you want to look at something specific, depending on what the emotion is, let's just say you're worried about something. You can take and put your fingers over your forehead and cup your palms over those cheekbones and sink into whatever the issue is. Again, holding it, if it's worry, holding that for ideally 3 to 5 minutes. Because I want to share something else with our listeners. What else is going on is that we are retraining the brain. People have heard of neuroplasticity. That's a very real thing. We know that the brain can lay down new neural pathways. When we start putting our hands on our heads in response to a stressor, and we're bringing that blood back up, we're training the brain. Like, yeah, we don't have to go there. When you go there and you're like, I'm worried about whatever. As soon as you do this, those points have to bring the blood back up. And so right there, the more you do it, you're training the brain to get into a better default pathway. Okay, so fear or grief and loss here. Worry, you're basically covering your eyes. Okay. Now, right next door to worry is anger, and that is the temple points. It's right at the edge of the gallbladder meridian here, and then triple warmer. They're very, very close. But here, same thing. Hands on forehead to bring in the mains, and then just hold over the temples basically and the edge of the eyebrow. This is for anger. Same thing. Bring to mind whatever the issue is that you're angry about. Give it a number. Hold those points because what people are going to find is you hold those points, you keep sinking into that emotion. Pretty soon you're going to find it's like, well, I can't even get upset about it now because it's dropped down to a 1 or a 2. And I do this with people all the time, and that's what happens. Now, a little caveat, I will tell people that occasionally it gets worse. That's okay too. Just hold it. You're probably going to have to hold it for longer. I look at it like it's kind of like the layers of an onion. It might, and then it'll start to dissipate again. Okay. So we have grief, we have anger, we have worry. Now, we still have 2 others, and that's fear and panic. Okay, or anxiety. Now, The good news is those points, I tell people, if you think about it, fear and anxiety often ride in together on the same horse. Think about it. Fear gives rise to anxiety or vice versa, right? So the good news is if people put your hand on the back of your head in line with where your eyes and your eyebrows would be back there, and then hold your other hand on your forehead. This is the one that I probably give the most to people when they're feeling that anxiety, that panic. This one is amazing for that, because the eyebrows are the fire, it's the panic, okay? And the eyes would be the water. So there you have it. You have these 5 very, very potent holds. And again, this is very general, very cursory, but they work. They work. And I would tell people to stick that in your little toolbox for particularly, during these times, because every one of those emotions right now is getting a workout. Every single one. More than we've ever had in our history.
Yes, exactly. And this is a self-soother, self-comforting that we can do with our own. I mean, it's just amazing to think
Yes.
we can truly calm ourselves down. And so it's very interesting then, the thoughts. We really have to be mindful of our thoughts.
Yeah. The first thing that I'm just going to go on record as saying is turn off the TV and get rid of the newspaper. Seriously, if there's anything truly you need to know, you're going to hear about it. One of the very best things for your health is to get rid of those 2 items. You don't get rid of them, just turn them off and go do something else instead. Go outside for a walk. Get a good book. And I'm talking an uplifting book, something funny or something that makes you think, a philosophical book, some poetry, something. There's a reason I'm saying this, because thoughts are very potent. You know what I was talking about, neuroplasticity? We've learned this also from the world of emotional freedom tapping, that you can lay down neural pathways related to a thought, that if you are repeatedly having this thought, I mean, you've heard the term, thoughts become things. Well, yes, they do. Yes, they can. And the reason is we keep putting more energy into it. So let's just say we've got a stressful thought about something that might happen. And we're being given a whole list of possible things that might happen. Think about it, right? Okay. I'm sorry, but gotta keep that fear up. If you stand back and say, I'm just going to observe this, okay? My favorite terms, I say, change the channel. You see yourself, and I've had to do it myself, so it's not like I'm, I don't get it. I totally get it. We've all been down the rabbit holes, okay? I just recognize the rabbit holes now. Like, nope, stay away. Don't go there, okay?
Yes.
Focus on something that makes you feel better. It could be something as simple as go over and sit and pet your dog.
Yes.
Okay. Go do your cat. Go look outside at your sky. I mean, it can be any number of things. And actually, one of my favorite things to do to help to change the channel of negativity that you might be going down, that we all do, is to come back and make a list of the things you are grateful for. Because it's amazing how you'll shift. You're going to shift your vibration, because we know that fear and panic and anger, all these emotions. They're real. We all have them. It's part of being human. They have a frequency. They have molecules too. We can thank the work of Dr. Candace Pert, the late Dr. Candace Pert, for that, who discovered the molecules of emotion. But because they have molecules, they vibrate. So they have a frequency about them. They tend to be a lower frequency. The frequency of love is the very highest, and joy sits right there next to it. It's like, right, okay. So when you have a gratefulness practice, it can be something as easy as looking around your space and saying, you know what, I'm really grateful for that book, and I'm grateful for my dog because, and I'm grateful for my eyes because I can see this, and I'm grateful for my legs because I can walk around, I can go out for a walk outside. The more you start adding things to your list, and you'll find it's very simple, it's very easy to do, and it shifts you out of that, oh, and you're like, oh, I'm not even in that worry mode now or that panic mode or anything like that. So you're right. Be mindful of your thoughts.
Yes, beautiful. I just want to say very quickly that it occurred to me the other day this I had heard someone say, "What if there's nothing wrong?" This is a person who's had a near death experience. And when I really understood the true meaning of that, it was a sense of relief. There's no judgment. And I think that's a really good place to maintain this peace once we use these tools to shift our vibration.
Right.
Beautiful tools, really important for these times. Well, Gail, we have an exciting opportunity for people to train with you, to take some courses with you. You're going to be doing a series of webinars for our audience, and it's all of this knowledge and more. Can you
Yes.
share with us what those courses will cover?
Sure. It's going to be a series of 3 courses. And basically, the first one is going to be taking a look at the science, the evidence behind energy healing. Because many of us who work with it, we know something's happening. I certainly do. I have some wonderful stories. But what appear to be some of the mechanisms? I mean, is there credence and validity to the meridian system that we use in acupuncture? Answer is yes. Okay. And there's some good research by some Korean researchers who, and I'll go through that in my course, who have given validity through use of something called blue trypan dye that they injected into the system, and they were able into the body systems, and they were able to see the different planes and lines of the apparent where the meridians are actually running just because of what showed up on the imaging studies. So yes, the acupuncture system exists. The ancients have known that. We've had, mummies, and we're talking Egypt and China and elsewhere, where mummies had tattooed points where the different acupuncture points exist. Acupuncture points have a lowered electrical resistance so that it makes it easier to get the results you want from a needle being put into it or a finger. So we'll go through that. We'll take a look at the evidence for the biofield, what makes up the human biofield or the aura. And I am hoping to be able to share too. I thought about this morning, that's why, but also some imagery from what we call the BioWell camera, because that is something I'm trained in, and I used it in my doctoral dissertation. But showing people the effects using myself, I'll just show some pictures, the effects of being in front of a computer all day and what it does to the biofield. Okay, so I'll be able to share that with people. One of the other courses is also going to be taking this a step further. So not only, what seems to be behind energy healing, but also grounding. When we talk about grounding, we hear a lot about that these days. And, what does it mean? It sometimes can sound like a very esoteric term. But the reality, there's a lot of good scientific data to back up why we should ground and why it's good for our health, particularly in these times. So these are, like I said, we're going to be looking at the evidence for the human biofield. We're going to be looking at the evidence for energy healing and, are we beings of light? Yes. We give off and we emit light. That's documented as well. I'll be sharing the research from lots of wonderful scientists and researchers and physicists to back this up, because I'll tell you, one of my favorite people is Dr. James Oshman. And anybody who's really interested in the science behind all of this, I think his book is one of the best. There's a lot of good books out there, but I like his the best from what I've read. And I'm not going to sit here and say I've read them all, because there's a lot of good stuff. But his book, Energy Medicine, The Scientific Basis, is a phenomenal read. He's written it so well that a non-physicist, non-scientist can actually read it and get it, because he's done such a good job of interpreting that. He is a physicist and a healer himself. Okay. And as he says, we have more knowledge of how conventional and alternative medicine works than we do on how conventional medicine works. We do. We know more about this stuff than we really know about conventional medicine. And after a 40-year career doing that, I'm in complete agreement with him. Frankly, Chinese medicine, it's logical. It makes a lot of sense. And it's withstood the test of time. It's been around for a very long time. So yeah, so those are the things that we're going to be talking about. I like to use the term, I mean, really what I'd like to give people, because, do we have all the answers around all of? No. Can science tell us everything we need to know? No. Is there an element of magic and mystery to this? Yes. But I also like what I think it was Bruce Lipton also said, that, miracles are just something we haven't figured out the scientific meaning for it. I'm paraphrasing, and I hope I didn't massacre that one too badly. But the gist of it is, there's still much for us to know. And I really think that that's part of this time that we're going through. Because again, if we can detach and just look at this bigger picture that's unfolding in front of us, to wake us up to our potentials as souls having a human experience during this time. I think that's really what this is about. And it gives us these intriguing peeks into ways that we can work with our bodies and help our health, ourselves, empowering ourselves.
Being so aware of our energy and the thoughts and the way it's making us feel, and ways that we can correct and steer ourselves into a higher vibration.
Correct.
Shift into a higher vibration. So,
Yes.
for example, all right, so that beautiful course, filled with all of your wisdom and information on it, is available on this webpage. And we invite all of our viewers and listeners to scroll down and check it out. The dates are listed there as well. And it's all recorded. So those who cannot join live still get the incredible benefit by accessing the information in those courses. You mentioned the BioWell camera and how
Yes.
sitting in front of a computer, I mean, we can feel, some are more sensitive than others. Um, we can say, maybe I don't feel so sensitive to the energy, but if we're sitting at our computer all day, even if we're standing at our computer, for those with stand up desks, we still feel maybe a little off. And that is the result of what you're saying. When we sit in front of a computer all day, it changes our biofield.
Yes, it
How
does.
do we shift that biofield back into its optimal state?
There are energy techniques. I mean, one of my favorites is to ground, but Donna Eden's daily energy routine, that's my go-to. I try never to miss a day without it, but some simple grounding techniques can be huge, because what we are is we're these vessels, and we take in energy. It's the same as working with clients. We take energy. We don't need to hang on to it. We need to discharge it. And so grounding can be an excellent way. Now, there are other techniques, and people will have to watch, to see how
Some would
we.
some would ask, how would you ground? I mean, like some
Okay.
might not even know. Like take your shoes off, draw a cord from your tailbone to the earth. What's grounding?
all the above. And that's why we're going to talk about the grounding class, because this is, again, my left brain wants to know. As my one friend said, she goes, this is educated woo. And so, what in the world do we mean by grounding? Well, we're electromagnetic beings, and we are conductors of subtle energy and subtle electricity. Every single cell in our body is a battery, and that battery can be sometimes have its polarity flipped because of thoughts. Okay. And what we're trying to do is discharge. We take in energy from the sun. We all do. We got to have the sun. We cannot live without it, no matter what. We take in, we want to discharge what we don't use, because we're different than a refrigerator or a microwave or a toaster in that way. But then we also need to be properly polarized with our feet hooking into the Earth's electromagnetic field to pull up that restorative, what we call yin energy. And that is, we are discharging, but as Donna said, we are rooting as well as grounding. And that's what makes us different than appliances. And that's very general. We go into the specifics in the course.
Okay. I know many are kicking their shoes off right now if they haven't already. And I know there's even some, I've seen even hikers out in rocky terrain with no shoes on, and that's earthing. And when we
Exactly.
are attuning to the earth, is that what's going on? Our biofield is receiving energy from the earth, or we're
Yes.
communicating. Is it a
Yes.
two-way street?
It is a two-way street. And another one for our listeners is if you have a tree, bare feet on wet grass is one of the very best ways. And Dr. Jim Oshman also has done some studies on grounding in this regard. He recommends half an hour, bare feet, wet grass daily for your health. But let's just say that in certain climates, you're not going to have the access, and you're going to get frostbite if you're out there bare feet. You're not Wim Hof. Okay, so, but you can put your back to a tree
Yes.
and effectively ground that way. Okay, because the tree is already rooted deep into the earth, and you're putting your spine. You can hug the tree too. I mean, it works both ways, right? So
Oh my
either
gosh.
way, but that can be a very effective way to ground.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Just feeling that when you mentioned leaning against a tree. I mean, yes, physically we're grounding ourselves, but so much more is going on.
Yes,
So much more. All right. And this
indeed.
is where science someday will catch up to this.
Right, right.
Quantum physics is attempting that, yes.
Yes, they are. They are.
Well, Gail, we are excited for your course and to work with you. And I mean, you look beautiful. Your energy is radiant. And that right there is proof of this beautiful way that we can shift our vibration with energy healing. So, as we wrap up, energy healing then is what?
It's a way to take our power back. That's how I look at it. I see energy healing as the sixth vital sign. In healthcare, for example, the vital signs are we check respirations, temperature, pulse, and we used to, well, depending on where you are, pain was another vital sign. That's gotten a little debatable now, so I'm not going to go into that very much. But as far as I'm concerned, energy healing is a very necessary part of our healing, because if you go back to the fact that, let's just say, Chinese medicine traditionally said that disease begins in the energy field. And I completely agree with this. And if it is not addressed, it will work its way in through the different layers and frequencies, frequency bands, whatever you want to call them, of the aura, the layers, until it moves into the densest part, which is the physical body. And the traditional healers were only paid when they kept their clients well. Now, that, in my book, is a direction that we need to think about in healthcare. It's not where we are now. We're doing the exact opposite. But if we can keep our patients, our clients well, but even more, if we can empower ourselves to take charge, basically, what can we do for ourselves? Because we've taken a lot of that out. And I'd like to see patients feel more empowered to take back their healing themselves, because we all have an innate ability to heal. And I think Donna Eden is one of the people who has inspired me the most. For people who don't know, if you look her up, she's easy to find. She's all over the web. But Donna is somebody who developed multiple sclerosis, or MS, at a fairly young age. And conventional medicine wasn't able to help her. They didn't have anything at that time. So she was tasked with healing herself. She had 2 young daughters, and that was impetus right there. There's nothing like love, right? And love is the great healer. And so that was it. She had always been able to see energy, and that kind of got poo-pooed and all that, but she's like, she could see it, she could feel it. She started moving her hands, and the rest is history, because she worked on herself every single day. She's now free of MS. And this is umpteen years later. And that is one of the reasons that prompted her to start her certification program.
Yes, and for that, the world is grateful
Yes.
because great strides have been made in this arena. And again, the blending of it with conventional medicine, the fact that it's getting attention is a positive sign. And there's opportunity now for this, even going into all things in our planet right now, all things that can be constructed from a foundation of love and compassion. That's what we're working for. And everything that you've mentioned today and the empowerment of people by using these tools is a new way for moving forward in our world. And I think we're going to see a lot more healers coming forward, people picking this stuff up and sharing it widely.
Yeah.
It cannot go back into the toothpaste tube. It is here. And you're proof positive. 40-year nurse, now saying this is one of the most important things for us.
It is. And I'm very comfortable saying that.
Well, beautiful. Gail Jett, we are so grateful for your time today and the beautiful tools that you've given us. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You are very welcome. You're very welcome. I'm happy to share.